packet for Friday. Mark me in, please. So I had just those few hours to look over it. Then received a communication from the mayor on Sunday evening, and then talked to him on Monday with regard to some issues that we've discussed. I talked with Dave Church about, I guess there's two issues. Number one, with regard to the portion of the resolution that talked about taking, as I understood it, and again, it was a summarily review, to equalize the compensation of the mayor. That seemed to be one of the provisions that he receives from the Heber Light and Power Board and the Sewer Board. Dave Church's opinion with regard to that was, Mr. Smedley, because the Heber Light and Power Board and the Sewer Board are independent entities and interlocal, governed under the Interlocal Act, that ability to say that it will be evenly distributed or to take away or to add to the mayor's compensation as the chair is under the jurisdiction of the board. So if the board, if you can convince the board to change the compensation, that's the board's decision. He said he did not feel that Heber City Council had the right to dictate to the board, the Heber Light and Power Board or the Sewer Board, what they were going to pay the chairman. That was up to the board. Now, with regard to the transparency issue, that was kind of new, as I think that's why the discussion was good, it came through. I do not think that it's not illegal, and I think the council has the right to pass a resolution that says, it goes to Councilmember Rowland's position, to the degree allowed by local, state, or federal law, be it resolved by Heber City that the mayor's compensation through Heber Light and Power or the sewer district in these special entities be reported and disclosed by Heber City. To the point that that's allowed through this act, it's not a bad...
This is my clarification. I realize you keep excluding the mayor in this discussion, or just including the mayor. Is there, because this resolution affects both the council and the mayor, not just the mayor.
Right.
Are you implying then that the mayoral position inherits a certain bit of anonymity and privacy than does the city council?
No. And so all the transparency would be fine with regard to all the council and the mayor, because we are a 6-member council, one of which is the mayor. We are not a strong mayor form of government. We're a 6-member council. All I'm articulating to you is I'm defining the distinction, the definition, the bright line, where there is a very narrow issue, because the mayor specifically sits as the chair of these two districts, or at least the Heber Light and Power Board, right? What's your specific position on the sewer board? Just a member. Okay, so so specifically with the Heber Light and Power Board, I'm saying that's the only reason, Eric, that I'm making that distinction. Everything else, the transparency is fine. I just don't think that the council has the legal standing to dictate to the board, the Heber Light and Power Board, what the chairman is paid. That's up to the board. Now, go ahead.
Okay, so just as a point of clarification, so I can understand the scope of that argument. So, if I understand what you're saying, because there is a position called chairman of the board that's established by a separate entity, does the classification of that entity matter? Does it matter if it's a local? Does it matter if it's a special district? Does it matter?
It matters that it is an independent interlocal. That's a good question.
Okay, so, so if it's an independent interlocal entity, and they create a position that is compensated more than others, and that position is required by those bylaws to be filled by the mayor, then he is then excluded from any kind of compensation resolution or regulations that are adopted by the city.
Let me insert something here. I think one of the things that I heard some of this conversation with David two weeks ago. It begs the question of, well, we already do it with the sewer board and the Heber Light and Power as it relates to those council members that sit on those boards. I think, as I understood it, the board doesn't respect to resolution, the resolutions are adopted by the council as it relates to compensation of those board members. But they can, which they have so far with the resolution that was previously adopted. But you don't have to build and control the compensation that the board members receive, but they may they may agree to send the money over to the city and have the city distribute it as per resolution that the city.
Okay, I understand the argument. That seems to put, and let me actually phrase another point just to help me clarify my final argument, my final attempt to understand this.
You're talking to the treasurer.
I know, and I'm trying to get this. I'm trying to make sure this.
And I'm not trying to argue,
So-
I'm just trying to.
I know, this helps me understand this more.
Right.
We're putting aside the position of the mayor, hypothetically, I know attorneys love to live in the hypothetical. Assuming that there is a board position where a council member is now appointed as the chairman of the board, and inherently because of the bylaws of that board, that council member now receives more money. Based on your argument, that council member has the right to keep that money, regardless of any resolution that's established in the city.
Right, conditioned upon how Mark has explained it. The city council can make resolutions.
So what's the point of
Right.
having any resolution whatsoever? It sounds like all these interlocals and outside entities can supersede any resolution or law that the city establishes.
You articulate and you have come upon a conflict that many other cities are having with these interlocal agreements and special service districts.
But aren't I bound as an elected official to uphold the ordinances and resolutions which are established by the city? So the conflict isn't with the organization, it's with myself. I'm breaking the very commitments I've made, my duties of office to abide by the resolutions and ordinances. Isn't that true?
Maybe I'm not following that last part, because I'm not saying that you shouldn't be transparent. I think you should.
No, I'm saying if I'm elected and sworn into office to uphold the resolutions and ordinances of the city or municipality from which I'm elected, that's my primary obligation, correct?
Well, yes, and that's a personal decision that you make as.
How's it, but then that implies that I can pick and choose resolutions and ordinances,
The
which I
conflict
wish
you
to follow.
have is when you're setting as a board member, your first obligation is to that board.
Wait, so you're saying the previous board members, when this resolution was passed before, applied to city council members, could have said, wait a minute, I'm not going to do this, just go ahead and keep sending me that check, I'm not going to divide it among the city council. They could have done that, but instead, all currently, our pay for being on the Heber Power Board is being divided. But I could say, never mind, I just want you guys to send it to me directly. You're saying this isn't legit for the city council either? Or only for the mayor? Like, what's the difference?
I think if the board chose not to respect the resolution adopted by the council, they can.
No, I get
We're
that.
not telling the board.
Yeah, we're not telling the board to do anything.
They can still.
I'm suggesting we have bound ourselves as elected officials to pass certain ordinances which give us inherent restrictions, regardless of what any board or interlocal does. And because of our duties as sworn elected officials to uphold those resolutions and ordinances, we don't have the liberty to pick and choose. We're not in that position. We've already bound ourselves to this.
And I'm not in a position, Eric, really to say whether that is legally sufficient or not. I think that is an internal decision that you make when you sit on the board. All I'm saying is that.
But don't we give up that internal interpretation when we have resolutions which have been passed by a majority vote for city council?
So you're saying that the city council makes a decision that, hey, we're all going to be compensated, regardless of what the board decides, the interlocal or.
They're really obligated to pay a certain amount to a person.
I know, and what you're saying is, if we as a body, a city body, Heber City, decide that this is how we're going to be compensated, we go to that board and that's how we're going to be compensated. That could be a position that you take, but I'm saying that if that individual person then goes to the interlocal board and the board decides, and they're voting on that, now they're sitting on the board and they're in a local agreement, and they're deciding, and it goes to a vote and they remain silent, or they vote aye and they decide, that.
But the crux, isn't the crux, though, based on the fact that they would not be there unless they were an elected official? They bring with them,
This is the chicken and egg argument.
they bring with them inherited obligations based on the fact they're elected officials. They wouldn't even be there in the first place unless they were an elected official. It sounds like,
What comes first is that we are elected here. That comes first. And for what comes
comes second, the board assignment.
And that's what I'm sorry, but I do not agree that when we're sitting on a board, we're there as representatives of that board. No, we are only there because we are first elected as city council members. We wouldn't be there otherwise. Now, if I was appointed to that board outside of being an elected official, then I absolutely agree. We're there first and foremost to represent that board.
I don't disagree with that. I don't disagree with that. I'm just saying that when you have a city and you have 3 cities and a county, and then you get together as an interlocal, you create a different creature.
I understand.
Okay. And
Mark,
so,
House Bill 17. No one knows really how that's going to be enforced come May of next year. And it could even be further broadened in the next state legislative session. We don't know that. We just know that there's a certain amount of enforcement coming. It's pretty nebulous in some ways.
okay.
And it could even apply to this sort of idea. So, until we just got to realize that that enforcement is coming, that further state requirement is coming too, which could apply to this as well as the other things. And so we've got to start gearing up for these things. We can't just say, oh, they're so independent. They're not. They're going to be under the same laws that every governing entity is under.
They won't become a municipal entity.
No, they're
True,
going to
yeah,
be
not
under
to
the
be,
same.
yes. I don't think anyone's saying that's the case.
So I'm saying I'm not necessarily uncomfortable with you passing a resolution saying, we as a city council can articulate exactly what you're saying. We are first, chicken and egg, we are first elected as Heber City officials, and we as a body agree that this should be the financial compensation, and we are passing a resolution as far as it is legal to do. This is how we want our mayor compensated, and this is how we want things done. Now, whether legally the board is going to listen to that, kind of goes to Heidi's thing. I doubt that they will right now, the way that it's written.
They're not bound in any sense
Right.
to do what we
So it's not illegal to make a resolution and a recommendation. I'm not saying that. I'm just saying when the mayor asks and says, well, is that going to change my compensation? Not necessarily. I think you're going to have to, the board is really going to be the one that decides that. Whether it's right or wrong, you as,
this is removing the board. This has nothing to do with what the board may or may do. Matter of fact, I would fully expect the board
and I fully
to
understand.
continue to write checks to the mayor specifically. What this resolution says is, no matter who you get checks from, if it's in compensation for your position as an elected official, that's where the line is drawn. You're now under the guise of the city. As an elected official of the city, that check must be sent to the city in order to be deposited into the general fund.
So let me just rephrase it so I understand. You're saying, look, I understand that the board can decide what they're going to pay their chairman, so whatever they decide. But the mayor's part of our family, and as a family, we're deciding that if a member of our family goes to serve on that board, regardless of what compensation it is, we would like to decide as a family that when, as our estate, it's divided equally between the siblings. That's what you're saying.
Mark, I
Yes.
always teach in the classroom that there's a clear difference between family and bureaucracy, okay? So if you want me to explain that,
No,
I'm just saying, don't
I'm
use
with you.
family. Okay?
Okay.
But to your point,
So,
I think
yeah,
that's-
or to your collective, to how you work. That's kind of what you're saying. That you're saying, look, if we agree, it's not illegal to make a resolution with regard to that.
That's
Now,
what we're saying.
whether that happens, and that's a very interesting, yeah.
I don't see that it affected the board to include all the city council compensation in one pot. I mean, that didn't affect the Heber Power Board. They just continue sending the checks, and then
And then you decided as a group to divide.
It's the money and it's divided, so it's the same thing. I don't think it affected the board in any way.
Yeah, I think if you make that distinction, and I'd have to think that through, Mayor, go through it, but that distinction does not, it's not illegal to make that resolution. And then there was another issue that goes to that, is that, the issue of transparency. I think you can put that in as well. I didn't gather that from my first review, that they wanted transparency. I think you can make a resolution that you as a body, as a group, not as a family, but as a body, right? You decide, hey, however the money comes in, whether Heber Power wants to keep that quiet, that's up to them. But once it comes into a member of our group, we would like to pass a resolution that, and I don't think the mayor is opposed to this, that be transparent and that it be, once he receives it, Heber City makes a report as to what that is and we disclose it. And I don't hear the mayor indicating that there's a problem with that at all. Yeah.
I mean, if you want to, you can write 15 resolutions you want to. It's not accepted by those companies or the board.
This has nothing to do with the right power. It has
Yeah,
nothing to do with-
I think Councilman Rowland is saying, look, we don't really care about that. We as
There's no control.
We as a group say, we would like whatever compensation that the mayor has, or anybody has, goes to Colleen's point, to be put into a pot.
It's just like Resolution 12. It's the same principle. We have no say whatsoever. We have no power. We have no authority to bind people like power under any obligation. We recognize that as a body. We recognize who they are and how they're classified. And that is not what any of these resolutions are saying. It's when it crosses the line and it starts affecting, as you've said, our group, it does affect. We can enact ordinances and resolutions as to how the company.
And you may disagree on it, but then you vote as a council. And if you can get 3 to agree to it, then you as a council make those
And then to
decisions.
my point, then as our obligation to uphold certain ordinances, or all ordinances, resolutions, we can't pick and choose which ones we agree with and which ones we don't.
I understand. And so if I were going to just do it in a summary, I would say, we can't tell the Heber Light Power what to pay the mayor as a chairman. We can't decide that. What we're saying is, once that money is received, we want a discussion as to whether now that money that the mayor has should be put into a pot. That's the debate that you're having. And I need to look at